Okay, so today I'm going to talk with you about LinkedIn newsletters. So we are going to go over what a LinkedIn newsletter is, how to publish a newsletter, benefits of newsletters, and how to use a LinkedIn newsletter to create an engaged network. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the difference between newsletters and articles, because I think that there's a lot of confusion there. So first of all, what is a LinkedIn newsletter? A LinkedIn newsletter is like a blog subscription. And so some of you may not be really familiar with what that is, but in the past, you used to be able to sign up for notifications when somebody published their blog. It's pretty much the same thing here, right? So when you publish your newsletter, people get a notification that are in your network, that are subscribed to your newsletter. So, I mean, it's kind of the same situation as when you're subscribed to a podcast and you get a notification. It's different than an email newsletter, obviously, because this isn't connected to your email newsletter. I know that some people may get an email notification when you publish your blog on LinkedIn, but that's only because of the way that they have their settings up, so if I personally don't have my settings set up to give anybody or to get a notification like that. So if you publish your newsletter, I'm only going to know if I go on LinkedIn. I'll get my notification on LinkedIn. And that's what it's like for, a lot of people. LinkedIn newsletters, the best thing I think about them is that when somebody connects with you, they automatically get asked if they want to subscribe to your newsletter. So, I think it's pretty reflexive probably for people to say yes. It's free advertising when LinkedIn does that. That doesn't mean, though, that you shouldn't be posting links to your newsletter and getting people to sign up, because I think a lot of people think that LinkedIn automatically just asks your entire network once you publish it to subscribe to your newsletter, and that's not the case. They only ask anyone who connects with you in the future to subscribe to your newsletter. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so newsletters are found in the articles section on LinkedIn, and we're actually going to go over to LinkedIn and I'm going to show you where to find this. But what I want you to think about with this is that this isn't an article. Like, you create it in the same way that you create an article, but this is published as a newsletter. So if we're thinking about keyword reach, an article is going to serve you better to be found on Google with. A newsletter is not going to serve you as well. It's similar to a post, and people's posts aren't found always through Google. So again, just to be really clear, a newsletter is something that you create in the article area, but it's not an article. So it's something that you publish on a consistent basis. And, when we get to the part about creating this, you can choose, maybe if you want to do it monthly or bi-weekly or something like that. Articles you can just publish whenever you want. I could publish 40 articles today, 1 tomorrow, 20 next month. It doesn't matter. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no consistency that you have to follow. Newsletters are meant to be used consistently. Okay. So it's very similar to a newspaper. I know some of our younger people probably aren't as familiar with newspapers, but it's very similar to a newspaper. So I'm going to first go over to LinkedIn to show you where you're going to do this. All right, so let's go. I want to dismiss this, and I'm just going to go right up. So I just logged into LinkedIn. I see my feed here, and I'm just going to click write article. Okay. So this is where it's deceiving, because a newsletter is not an article, right? Okay. So we want to go to manage, and then we want to go to newsletter. And if I wanted to publish another edition of my newsletter, I could click on this. Melissa already has a newsletter, so I could do that. But if I want to get started and get creating one, I'm just going to go here. Okay. And it's great here too, because LinkedIn tells you that your connections and followers will be invited to subscribe. So what that, and again, I think this is extremely misleading because they're going to notify your network when you publish your first edition of your newsletter, but not everybody is going to get that notification. It depends on how they have their settings set up. And it's not a personal notification. It just comes into their, let's go like over here and I'll show you what I mean. It's going to look something like this. So what it will say here is Melissa Hinault published an edition of her newsletter, and you can click on it. And I think the main reason I want to hit home with that is because I think a lot of you think that a lot of people are going to subscribe from that. And the reality is, with notifications and things on LinkedIn and it kind of being saturated, especially with people that haven't adjusted their settings, they're probably getting all kinds of notifications. So the reality is it may get lost. All of this to say that I want to make sure that you promote your newsletter so that people can sign up for it. Okay, let's go back over here. Let's go back to, we're going to just click create a newsletter. So you'll want to put your newsletter title here, and this should be keyword optimized. So please go watch the keyword module if you're unsure, but it should be something that your ideal client is searching for, like a phrase, like if my ideal client was searching for leadership instruction or leadership classes or something like that, I would try to use both of those words in the newsletter title. Okay. I would also try to use multiple keywords in my newsletter description. Now, just know that we always, whenever we're using keywords, we want to make sure that things still sound like a human being. And you could get AI to do this pretty easily, right? If you went to ChatGPT or Claude and you generated your list of keywords that your ideal client is looking for after watching the keyword module, right? Then you could say, I'm creating a newsletter on LinkedIn for my audience. Can you recommend 20 SEO optimized title and newsletter descriptions? Take those, edit those into, usable language that sounds like it's not written by a robot, and then use those things. This is where you can select how often you want to publish. And I'm not sure, we can go to Melissa's and see if you can edit this after the fact. But my thought is you're pretty much stuck with this. So pick something that's not too, it doesn't need to be, I'm certainly not daily. Weekly, I think, could be tough. I'm more of a fan of bi-weekly or monthly. I think that's reasonable, right? And I think, if you think about this, if I did a monthly newsletter, that means that I have 12 newsletters to write per year. In theory, I could batch all of those out if I blocked 2 or 3 hours on my calendar and got all of them done, right? So then they're all done for the whole year. That is why I would probably go with something like monthly or even bi-weekly. So when you add an image here, it says 300 by 300 pixels. Please do not use 300 by 300 pixels. If you do, it's going to look blurry. So if you're using Canva, we're over here. So let me open up another page in Canva. What we're going to want to do is just go to like social media and use like an Instagram square size. What you're just looking for is a larger size of a square. This is 1080 by 1080. It's still going to fit when you publish it. So, but you also have to remember that this is going to be small, right? Like really small. So let's go back and look at Melissa's. We're going to click out of here because we're going to be done with this part. Okay. Okay. So let's go to Melissa's and look at her newsletter. So this is where you can see that it's small, right? Like this isn't a huge graphic. So, I think it's a stretch that we have ours in cursive right here. I would probably aim for much bigger letters and don't try to put a bunch of words on it. The title is right here, right? So you don't have to worry about it not being, really readable, right? Like just a good image, I think is fine here, or something with initials like Melissa's MH, if you're familiar with that. Okay. So now that we're in here and we can see Melissa's newsletter, I think it's also important to know that this is where you go to create a new edition of your newsletter. So if I wanted to, let's say I went through the steps and set mine up, this is where I would go to just create a new edition. And again, it looks just like an article page because it is similar to an article, but remember, it's not an article, okay? So you're just going to go through the process and set up your newsletter here. Let's go back out to the training and then we'll get back to that. So before we kind of go through how to set up your newsletter, how to do anything like that, we'll use one of Melissa's as an example when we do that. I want to kind of go over what are the ideas behind LinkedIn newsletters. Creating regularly scheduled newsletters for LinkedIn is just a great way to build your authority, right? Unlike your posts, when your newsletter is released, your subscribers can get a notification. And like I said, LinkedIn will ask your new followers and connections to subscribe for you. And if we're talking about, I know many of you know that only 4% of people post on LinkedIn. How many people do you think do a newsletter? I'm going to guess like 0.5%, maybe. That's probably a stretch. So know that if you have a newsletter, the vast majority of people don't, or they have one that they don't publish anymore. So my recommendation is not to get started on this unless you intend to be consistent. And I think the thing with this is if you don't have your content down yet and people aren't engaging with your content, creating a newsletter is not going to help you out at all. You need to get your content to a place where people are engaging with it before creating a newsletter. If you're, this is just, me being completely straightforward here, but if your content is not getting engagement, there's two problems, okay? You don't have the right people seeing it, which we can fix, but I would want to see you get that fixed before we created a newsletter. Or you're not creating content that your ideal client wants to interact with. And that's okay. I mean, here's the thing, if this is all discovery or trying to figure out what our ideal client needs to hear. And I would say the vast majority of people, when they start to create a newsletter, not a newsletter, content, we don't know what our ideal client needs to hear. There's some that just get it right off the bat, but most of us have to do some discovery to figure out what that is. All that to say, right? Creating a newsletter is not going to increase anything, do anything for you, unless you're creating content that people already want to see, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so content. How do we create this newsletter? What do we put in here? All of the things. So, here's some ideas for you. If you've already created your content pillars, which again, remember, if you haven't created content, a newsletter is not a good idea. So use one of your content pillars as the theme of your newsletter. You could definitely do that. No matter what you decide to choose for the theme of your newsletter, make sure that it addresses your ideal avatar's pain point directly. And if we want to be even more direct with this, if you already have your offer together, your newsletter should provide, we don't teach about lead magnets in the academy, but similar to a lead magnet, your newsletter should be providing quick wins for your ideal client so that the next step opens up to potentially work with you, right? Or to see the value in what you're doing and see you as an authority and want to work with you. So when you're creating your newsletter and when you're sharing it, you want to make sure that your ideal clients know that you're going to be sharing this value with them and how it aligns to the pain that they're currently experiencing. And again, as for creating this, we want, and I'm going to go over and show you this. So I'm just kind of going through the slides and then we're going to go back over to LinkedIn. But I want you to use mixed media. And if anybody is like, what is mixed media? That's those things right there. You can use graphics. You can put videos in here. You can, and you can put videos, you can embed videos, you can put headings and subheadings. And I'm going to go over all of this, but you can use bold text. All of that is telling you that like we want to make this really readable. I don't want to see you put an article that's like a whole bunch of paragraphs that people are just going to have to read through, because whereas it might be insanely valuable, and I have no doubt that all of your content is, that's just not how people consume things anymore, right? We need pattern interrupters. We need it every time, and this is just something that you might want to write down, but every time you create a piece of content, you create a newsletter, you want to go through it and make sure that it's skimmable. And that may sting some of you because you're like, I want my people to read all my stuff. Of course we do, right? Of course we do. However, the reality is most people are going to skim. So making sure that it's easy for people to skim through your things and find the key points and get the key takeaways is crucial if we want people to remember what we do and what we're all about. Okay? So let's go over here. Actually, let me go through some of the kind of the bells and whistles here, and then we'll go over to Melissa's and show you how some of hers are set up. So you can have different types of text here. So you can use heading, subheading, and normal. This is very much like a Google Doc or Microsoft Word. You can use bold text, italic text, bullets. You can put a block quote in here. This is for code. So if I wanted to, let's go to YouTube and I'll show you something. Let's go find one of Melissa's videos. Where is her content? So we're just going to go to this one. We're going to click on this guy. Okay. And then we're going to click share. And we're going to click embed. And we're going to grab this code, copy. And then we're going to hop back over to LinkedIn and we're going to click paste. So then if we click outside of here, all right, let's get back up here. Can we preview this? All right, let me preview it. All right, that's not what we want. All right, wrong code thing. This is if you want to display code, which none of you would ever do. This would be if you were like a coder and you wanted to show people your code. Instead, you're going to want to go here to embed. And I don't think we even need to put the full embed code in here. I think we can just grab the share link. So let's go over here and we'll start over. We'll grab this link. Then we'll come over here, click embed, paste, apply. There we go. There's the video. Maybe in just a second. Anyway, this is what I mean by mixed media, right? We can put, so this is like content idea, right? If you have a podcast or something, or if you publish YouTube videos, or if you have old ones that you want to share, this is a great thing to embed to lead people back to your other content. So when I say mixed media, what I'm trying to tell you here is to make sure that like we can change the heading here. We can make this a heading. Let's highlight that. Come up here, make this a heading. We can make subheadings. I could make this italicized. Well, maybe not this one. If it were normal text, I could make it bold or italicized. I could make a list. And you can also put links in here. This is a place where LinkedIn would want links. You can also add images or upload videos directly here. So there's just lots of options. And this is what I'm saying when I say not to make it like, just text text for people to read. Add some other supporting things, whether it's just images or you're mixing up how the text looks. That's going to help people skim through this. So I'm not going to go over that too much more depth. We're going to go back to Melissa's Modern Entrepreneur, and we're going to look at what she's done here. And I'm back out here. So let's go to the Modern Entrepreneur. And we're going to go here. And you can see here, like this one is, we've got all of the things, right? So we have bold text here. We're using ordered lists. I would probably, if I was the one that would have done this, I would have made this into a heading and a subheading so that the text would have been bigger. You could also add graphics in between these, you know, is it like a graphic that says like use keywords strategically, just to make it so that it's not just text, right? But this is written in kind of like letter style, so it's okay. This, we could have definitely embedded the podcast here, and my team probably does not know this, so it's something I'll have to tell them. But you can see that we have images here. This looks great. We've used emojis here. This looks great. So that's, and all this is also, I'll just tell you, this was from a newsletter that we sent to our email list. So that kind of brings me to the topic that I'll kind of end on here, is just content repurposing. For your newsletter, if you want to make it your email newsletter, absolutely. But what I just want to invite you to think about everything, especially if you're not getting clients right now, and if you're not getting traction, kind of reanalyze your email newsletter, your LinkedIn newsletter, all of the things, and think of it from the lens of, is this valuable to my ideal client? And does it provide a quick win that opens up the possibility for them to work with you, right? So I want you to just approach everything you do with that lens, and it's just going to make your content that much more impactful. Now, underneath this video, I'm going to link a document with some Canva graphics for you. So some newsletter covers like this one, and images and things that you can use in your newsletters and also your events. So hopefully this helps, and please bring any questions that you have to our hot seat coaching or strategic advisory.